Yeah, but it's true. If you've got a cheap paying client, guaranteed they're just gonna be a nightmare. It happens every single time, undoubtedly. Hey guys, unfortunately, from time to time, you're gonna get some nightmare clients who are gonna not like your work. I'm gonna talk you through what my team do to handle that process and basically de-escalate those problems and either get the client back on side or leaves you with the question whether or not you want to continue working with that client or not. At the end of the video, I'm also gonna give you some tips that we now implement to really minimize that. And I mean, we probably only have one problem like this a year. So I'll share with you how we look after our clients at the very end. So we manage challenges like this around a 5-part process. The first is we start with listening to the client. We then identify the real cause of the problem. We ask ourselves, can it be resolved? We look at what is the actual client looking for? Are they just wanting a refund, or are they looking for the video to be finished, or what do they actually want? Because sometimes what they say and shout at you isn't always the same. And finally, we then manage their expectations. So that might be down to deliverables, it might be due to the project as a whole, and I'll dive into each one of these sections in a little bit more detail. Listening sounds like a pretty obvious skill to have, but unfortunately, people don't really do that well with it. And especially when you have a client ringing you up that is fuming at a video. And I've also had clients ring me up that say, Ross, I don't know what to say. I hate the video. You can have this gut-wrenching feeling and it's horrible because you obviously don't produce work that you know the client's going to hate. Like, you think you're all visually aligned with what they want. And often, just by giving them the opportunity to listen to them and for them to explain what it is that they don't like about it and really dive into more information about that is the best thing you can do. Sometimes people just want to vent. You need to allow them to vent before you think about backing yourself up. Now, this can also be something that you haven't even done wrong yourself. It might be something that's uncontrollable, or the client's brought on themselves because you've missed a deadline, but they were waiting for like 2 or 3 weeks to give you back the amendments. So there's loads of things that can happen, but it's important that you just listen to them and give them the time to get everything off their chest, and then you'll be able to deal with a much calmer client as a result of it. Often when you're doing the listening bit, the client's actually not clear on the real key cause, and it's not until you ask some questions and start to break it down that you can identify what that is. So a question that we simply ask is the problem with the filming, or is it with the editing? Because if it's with the filming, then that's a problem because you might be considering a reshoot. If it's with the editing, it can be resolved in a simple re-edit. And actually, I think in all of our cases, bar one, it's always been to do with the edit. And I say always like it's a big problem, but in those handful of times this has happened, it's normally always to do with the editing and just some things were slightly misaligned because they didn't pay for pre-production and they don't have a storyboard and all the rest of it. But the one time where it was actually down to the filming, it wasn't anything to do with us. It was the fact that it was raining on the day on an outside shoot, and the athlete actually didn't perform how they were meant to perform as well, which made that really difficult. And the client obviously knows that as well, and we were able to just very softly and calmly just kind of outline the fact, the challenges and the parameters on the day. And as a part of this, moving forward, without getting completely ahead of ourselves, is we always suggest someone from the client agency or the actual client's team themselves comes along, because it's just someone that you've got that can validate, yeah, unfortunately it was raining for the entire day, the sun didn't come out, or something as simple as that, which can be really challenging when the CEO in their office gets the video and they go, that's nothing how I expected. And sometimes when that starts to roll downhill, the CEO tells the marketing team, you've done a terrible job, and then they come back to you and they just relay all of that information. It can be quite a horrible environment, but that's why it's key to identify the root cause of the issue. Where does it lie? And by simply starting with that question, you're figuring out in your head, can it be resolved, within the either budget? And this is where it leads on to the second bit, is what is the client actually looking for? Like, do they just want a refund? Are they just one of those people that just want their money back, or they just don't want to pay? If they don't want to pay, by the way, they don't get the project. They don't get to keep the video that they hate and not pay as well. However, I often try to think, what's the worst thing that can happen? In the back of your mind, you lose out on a client, you between you and them, you kind of have a bad reputation, and then you lose out on the money because you've done all that work. Like, that's worst case. It's not life and death, and I try and remove myself really far. You know, they call it the 30,000 foot view, and it's kind of zooming out of your business super far and then just looking at it from, actually, this will pass with time, but let's try and manage it the best we can. And if they do want a refund, then okay, let's go for it. And often speaking, I think in all of our cases, we've never had to refund because we've handled it really well. And that's why this part of the process is so important to still grow in your company. So you figured out what the client's problem is and what they're actually looking for and how it's actually going to be resolved now. It just comes down to remanaging their expectations. So it might be a case where you end up thinking, okay, right, well, we're going to have to reshoot this because yes, it was raining out, or yes, your person didn't do this or whatever. And then I think it's always nice to kind of begin with, what kind of budget do you have in mind for this? If it's clear that they're saying it's not your fault, they're just annoyed at the situation. And in some instances, we've just done that at a discounted rate to kind of help them out and stay on side with them. Other times we haven't, and in really extreme circumstances, I don't think this has actually happened with us, but I certainly know it's happened with other people where they've done a reshoot for free. I think that's a dangerous territory depending on who was in the wrong. If your SD card corrupts and you haven't got the footage, then you need to do a reshoot. Like, that's on you, unfortunately. That's not the client's fault. Even though that's out of your hands, it's you, okay? So it's just about being aware of, like, where does that responsibility actually rely on, and who does it fall on to actually step up and say, yeah, okay, I take responsibility for this, or actually that's actually your responsibility, but let's work together on this. And it's always about coming up collaboratively to move the project forward, and basically at that point get it done. And really remanaging those expectations leads on to these points, which is what we actually do now to make sure we're aligned, and means that we hardly ever get any comeback jobs, even down to amendments. Most of our projects, when they leave our studio, that's it. They don't often come back for amendments, or very, very, very minor changes at that. And that's because we're so aligned on the client vision. And this is basic stuff, but it's the basic stuff that I never asked when I was starting out, which led me to have these problems, which were horrible to experience. And then as a result, I changed things within my company to make sure that that doesn't happen again. So now we ask every client these set of questions. Out of these three things, what's the most important to you? Budget, quality, turnaround time. Because if they say the budget's the most important, depending on what their budget is, you can pretty much guaranteed if they're pushing you for budget, but they also want the other two, they're gonna be a nightmare client. Red flags galore. If they're focused on quality, then that's great. That's good for you, but it's probably going to be a bit more expensive to deliver that quality. And if they're focused on turnaround time, again, that's fine, but you have to be efficient with your processes, meaning that budget might be slightly higher to get it done, but your quality might be a little bit lower as a result. So we just start with that to get an understanding of exactly what they want. We then ask them, do you have a budget in mind for this project? And I often follow that up with, I can throw loads of numbers at this, but really, do you have an idea of what you're looking to spend? Because that gives me a ballpark of what I can go and then extract as much value out of as possible. And that works really nicely with, have you got any videos of competitors or any videos that you've seen that you would like to use for inspiration or would like this project to look like? Because if they say their budget is $1,000 and they send you the latest Nike commercial or a Ferrari commercial, you know that you need to manage their expectations and really tell them, hey, you're not gonna get this for that money, or whatever it is, or just manage their expectations more. And just having that clear, concise communication with them really helps in the long run. And it's also a great opportunity for you to get a visual understanding of what they're looking for. Sometimes clients send you the most horrible basic videos that you've ever seen, like something that you literally probably could do when you're 10 years old. And then you think, well, this is great because I can do way better than that. And then you actually upward manage their expectations and say, well, we could do this. And that really positions you as kind of like a high authority and gives you a higher perceived value. Finally, deliverables and turnaround time. So what are we actually looking to produce? We're looking to produce, XYZ videos. And this is key, right? Because they say, oh, thanks for the videos, Ross. We've just received our 3 videos. Can you turn these into reels for us? Because we want to put them on TikTok and Instagram. And you go, well, that wasn't in the original brief, so it's probably going to cost a bit more. Or you say, yeah, do you know what? It's only going to take us like 15 minutes. Yeah, we'll just quickly do that. Or we'll do 1 or 2. But it gives you a great reference point to refer back to in case your scope of work changes. Therefore, you can charge a little bit more for that as well. And obviously, final turnaround time is when do you need this done by? If they tell you they don't need it for a couple of months, then fine. It's all about covering yourself as well as finding out from them exactly what their expectations are. Because if you don't have these conversations, and we didn't used to have these conversations, people would say, hey Ross, on phone us on Wednesday, hey Ross, how's those videos coming along? And you think, I only filmed for you on Monday, but the expectation was that we've been turning around stuff so quickly for them that this project would be exactly the same. And actually, this is probably quite a new thing we've implemented, is finding out exactly when do they need the videos from. And if they don't know, we can then guide them and say, it will be before this date. And actually setting a date is really nice, because in that way, they don't call you every 5 minutes hoping their video's there and then being disappointed because you haven't done the video yet. And that's just because you've managed their expectations a lot better. Would you guys mind if I just ask you a really quick question? I'd love to know what your favorite moment of this video was. Was there anything that kind of stood out for you as like, that was a really key moment, or that was something I'm definitely going to go and implement in my business? If you can just post that in the comments below, that'd be amazing. Gives us an insight to what people are kind of like looking for and what people found helpful. And maybe I can expand on that in a video of itself. So that'd be amazing if you wouldn't mind just spending 2 seconds to go ahead and do that. Once you've had a second to do that, I think this video will really help some of you. It's the 10 things that have really helped grow my production company and make it successful. These are key things that I've implemented over the years, and these are things that I would advise everyone does if you want to have a quicker growth within your business. So take some time to take a look at that. Let me know what you thought in the comments below. I really appreciate all the help and support on this channel. I hope you're enjoying these videos.